halfway through.
Hello guys, and welcome back to my gameplay reaction video. Today we're reacting to a prehistoric YouTuber called Lindsay Nikole. Go to her channel, I'll put in the description, but we thought about Rewriting Prehistory. I watched this video and it was crazy. We found clues that are big in there. Seriously, anything.
2026, and it's already proving to be big for paleontology and fossils everywhere. As time goes on, our understanding of our prehistoric planet changes, which is very sick. And I would say in the last 6 months, it has already changed in big ways. So this video is kind of like the news, but if the news made you feel good and curious about the world, yeah, I've got 5 breaking stories in the world of paleontology that are going to shiver your timbers in a good way. Some new sick dinosaurs, a new and very unexpected apex predator of the Cretaceous, and a reclassification of an iconic fossil that might now be considered a new form of life from a kingdom that is now entirely extinct. Yeah, dude, big deal.
The problem is, there could be like millions, billions, different life forms. Like, there could be forms that I like, see?
Shit! So let's get right into it. Maybe you wish they were still alive, maybe you're glad they're extinct. But you know what should definitely be extinct? Bad coffee. And comments here can help you do this. And you can make boom. Block is the fruit. One thing. Where is your favorite information common is that they are fossils. And I can say stuff about fossils. And maybe I'll say stuff that kind of serves as a good appetizer for the first fossil on this list. Yeah. Alright, scratch that. Let's get the general information out of the way. Give you some context on the nature of the fossil record. As I have mentioned a few times on this channel, the fossil record can be muddy as fuck. It gives us a good snapshot into Earth's history, but definitely not a complete picture. Not all animals become fossilized. Matter of fact, the vast majority of animals that have ever lived left behind absolutely zero trace. It's a process that requires certain criteria to be met. So, here are some tips and tricks if you want to preserve your body for millions of years. Number 1, have a hard skeleton or hard parts, bones, teeth, shells, woody tissue, etc. Soft bodies like you find on worms, jellyfish, lots of insects, decay way too fast to leave much behind. So 1, hard parts. Check. Number 2, die in the right environment. Ideally in a drier environment and in sediment like mud, sand, volcanic ash. If you're in the United States, maybe Utah, Montana, Colorado.
Not to be able to Americans, but your country's fucked. You have tons of school shootings, you eat too much, what do you know, too much fast food, and Donald Trump. Okay, I'm sorry.
This goes into number 3. Get buried quickly. Before scavengers in decomposition get you before you even get a chance, alright? Make sure you got that written down. Never know when that might come in handy someday. Once you're all nice and cozy, buried far away from any form of life that can use and exploit you, the fossilization process can begin. Over thousands to millions of years, sediment keeps piling on top, and the pressure starts compressing the layers into rock. At the same time, groundwater seeps.
If the human did this now, literally now, and let's say in 100,000 years, we change, like, we have more hair and are a bit more smarter, like our heads are bigger and we have stronger bodies and tissues.
Minerals dissolved in that water slowly infiltrate the tiny pores inside your bones, crystallizing in place. A process called it's a little bit of a tongue twister. Mineralization. It's when you want to say fast and quick. Mineralization. Essentially, your bone gets replaced molecule by molecule with rock. You become rock. There's other pathways too, like molds and casts, where the original material dissolves, leaves a cavity that later fills with new minerals. There's carbonization, that happens a lot with leaves and soft tissues, where everything compresses into a thin carbon film. And in rare, very cool cases, preservation in amber or permafrost. Very sick, because it can lock in soft tissue, DNA fragments, even color. But again, the soft tissue fossilization is really, really rare. So the fossil record tends to be heavily skewed towards vertebrates, animals with a backbone, i.e. the hard parts. They get a lot of attention in paleontology. Vertebrates have given us the classic fossils like T-Rex, all other dinosaurs, the mammoths, etc. Invertebrates, animals without backbones, are a lot rarer in the fossil record. They usually get less attention because no invertebrates, no attention. Partly because they fossilize like shit. Also because invertebrates are generally thought to be smaller and simpler than vertebrates. I know you bug freaks are probably offended, but you know it's true. at least a little bit. Ever since vertebrates evolved, they've been at the top of the food chain. The invertebrates, meanwhile, are usually just little guys that get eaten by bigger guys. The vertebrates. Sure, we can get into the Carboniferous period where that wasn't necessarily the case. Overall, though, I think it's fair to say that's been the case for the history of complex life in general. Whether it's whales vacuuming up huge quantities of shrimp or birds pulling worms out of the dirt, invertebrates generally just go about their business and try not to get eaten in the process. But some invertebrates have taken a more active role in life. Some have grown to truly insane sizes and have become insane predators. That's right, bitch, the cephalopods. This is the family of soft-bodied invertebrates that include octopuses, squid, nautiluses, cuttlefish, and some extinct ones like ammonites and orthicums.
Yeah.
Octopuses, squid, nautiluses, cuttlefish, and some extinct ones like ammonites and orthicums. The giant is squid, nautiluses, cuttlefish, and some extinct ones like ammonites and...
Like this, ammonites are monsters. They're like sea creatures you can ride and tame. If you found this shell 100 years ago, it would be good. 10 million years ago, it would be better. Or you can get genes and still be good. And maybe you get a bit less focused and maybe bigger kind of genes. But we found some. Other humans lived for 200,000 years. Right? We found this nautilus of this guy shell 100,000 years ago, because if the less longer it was for you to be fossilized, the better you get genes. If you found this shell 100,000 years ago and it's way more better, that means nautiluses were here, right? That's the lizard seed. They found it 10,000 years ago. You found out a shell was here 10,000 years ago. That means they were alive for so much. 1,000 years ago, they are alive. 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, was a big chance that they are alive, but still a chance they was extinct. 10,000 years ago, meaning they actually survived. 1,000 years ago, meaning they're in the ocean. Okay?
Orthicums. The giant and colossal squids alive.
No, cool. It's in squid.
Today are, and some extinct ones like ammonites and orthicums. The giant and colossal squids.
I think there's colossal. Yep. It's this squid evolved to have this a shell on a figure or bigger than this. Because colossus, I think, should be a word for bigger creatures. There's more fatter, like Paraculus. It has bigger arms, longer, which will be different in mass. Like this part, the end touches it, the tip touches it. It will be bigger, hairy, and this part, I think it's a shell, to be a bit more tougher, right? Handle more harder grows. And they are more squishy that they can move their heads, like this part, like here, and move here. They can squish this here. Like a sperm whale tries to attack, or like a pack of walkers attack, it can come in there, and when the all comes in to try to grab and kill it, it could act like it's slowly dead, and food it quickly. The one is, it could evolve. It could have its skin to be evolved to be
today are great examples of invertebrates saying fuck you to the idea of being at the bottom of the food chain. Giant squid, without the tentacles, can reach 16 feet. Colossal squid to 14 feet. With the tentacles, they're like over 30 feet long. That's fucking crazy. That's 3 times the length of this room. That's 5 times the length of this. 5 times the length of that. Ugh, that's sick. Absolutely horrific. They get so big that their only natural predators are sperm whales, which are...
Okay. Holy crap, man. Like, damn. 13 meters, 15 meters, 15 meters. Okay, there's a big difference. Meters 50. If something was bigger.
Bigger. The largest individuals get up to 52 feet. But what if I told you there were even whales, which are even bigger? The largest individuals get up to 52 feet. But what if I told you there were even bigger cephalopods alive in the late Cretaceous?
Okay,
we've arrived at the first fossil discovery on the list. Just announced this year, a potentially 62-foot long octopus, bitch. You know what else is sick?
Okay, this is here. into mosasaurs. It's a 10-foot figure, but still. Let's say, if we found out that the colossal squid is 62 feet bigger, and we found it, and I'm not saying we found this 62 feet, the same size as the colossal squid, we found 72 feet bigger. It will shock everyone because they believe, okay? And then from here, colossal squid could be evolved into this new type of octopus or squid that can get up to 62 feet, or maybe even bigger. No.
62 feet long. DimensionOfStuff.com says 2 buses, a cricket pitch, whatever the fuck that is, a bowling lane apparently. A bowling lane feels a lot shorter than 62 feet, but whatever. AKA a very great length. And compared to living octopuses, that is gargantuan. The biggest octopus alive today is the giant Pacific octopus that we know of that can get to like 14 feet. This newly described octopus was given the scientific name Nanaima-toothis, also nicknamed the Cretaceous kraken in the paper, which is sick. Scientists estimate it ranged from toothis, also can get to like 14 feet. This newly described...
God damn! This guy, if you put it next to this, is small. I see, the tentacles are bigger than him.
The octopus was given the scientific name Nanaima-toothis, also nicknamed the Cretaceous kraken in the paper, which is sick. Scientists estimate it ranged from 22 feet all the way up to 60.
The thing octopus. Go.
52 feet, so even at the smaller end of the scale, they were still way bigger than modern octopuses. Also, 22 to 62 is a pretty big size range. So how the fuck did they figure this out? How do we know how big octopuses that were alive like 100 million years ago were? I mentioned invertebrates don't usually fossilize all that well because they don't have the bones. So where do the authors of this paper get their evidence from? Well, an interesting thing about cephalopods is that when they first evolved all the way back in the Cambrian, they would have had shells. We know this because a bunch of them were fossilized, like the shells of ammonites, orthocones, these paperclip-looking freaks. Over time, most cephalopods got rid of their shells. The only ones that kept them were the nautilus, which is why they look prehistoric as hell. Octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish all either lost their shells or kept a small shell inside their bodies. That's what a squid pen or cuttlebone is. Not a bone, because like I said, this is a no-bone zone. There's plenty of reasons why cephalopods decided to get rid of or internalize their shells. Size, speed, fluidity. When you have to carry around a shell wherever you go, you're limited in how big you can get and how fast you can get. We've all seen snails. They're slow as fuck. Or how liquid you can be. It's helpful to be liquid in many scenarios. So, while getting rid of their shells allowed cephalopods to get bigger and swim faster, it also meant they didn't leave behind a lot of fossils.
You know what would be cool? I don't know if this is true, but it's like, it says in the whole book, a tiny pot, like, they say the toughness, but the squid, let's say that it goes away, it's expand, right? And it could have...
for us to find. Obviously, fossilization wasn't a priority for them. It does make studying their evolution a bit harder, but there is one hard part of their bodies that they didn't get rid of. Their beaks! That's right, bitches. Cephalopods have beaks, and they fossilize. Scientists can use these fossilized beaks to estimate the size of the cephalopods they belong to. Kind of like how we can guess the size of megalodon based on their teeth.
Okay. This could, I know megalodons have been shown a lot to be very big, right? Same as diary, T-Rexes and Moses. But if this was actually, let's say, this could be an adult version, and this could be a child, it was a middle-aged child, like, let's say a 5-year-old megalodon from in that world, because different year ages, that would mean an adult could be bigger. It could be as big as a
So, the authors of the paper,
earliest
a team from
octopuses were getting top Cretaceous.
Kaido University in Japan used high-resolution grinding tomography, which is kind of like an advanced CT scan, and an AI model to find fossil octopus beaks hidden inside solid rock. The fossils came from sites in Japan and Canada. They were buried in calm seafloor sediments, which means they were very well preserved. Because they were in such good condition, the Hokkaido team was able to see wear marks and scratches on the surface of the beaks. These marks are consistent with the kind of thing you'd expect to see on the beaks of modern cephalopods. They use their beaks to crush and crack open shells, which strongly suggests that the Cretaceous krakens were active carnivores that routinely crushed hard shells and the bones of large marine vertebrates in their beaks. For context, large marine vertebrates in question of the time were things like mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, fucking horrific predators in their own right. With estimated total lengths of 62 feet, the krakens might have been the biggest predators in the Cretaceous oceans that we know of, rivaling or even outgrowing mosasaurs and other large marine reptiles. That's horrific and basically rewrites everything we thought we knew about what life would have been like for animals in the Cretaceous oceans. Mosasaurs are generally thought to have sat at the top of the food chain. Now it seems like they might have been in direct competition with fucking giant krakens. Who knows? Maybe even hunted by them. Probably at least a little bit. Absolute nightmare freaks. Horrific. I'm glad we found out about them because they're sick. Alright, next up on the list is another horrific animal from the Cretaceous. One you're probably already familiar with, but surprise, surprise, another fucking big update. Yeah, new Spinosaurus shit. If you haven't already heard, a team of researchers led by paleontologist Paul Sereno recently described a new species, Spinosaurus mirabilis. But before we get into it, let's get on the same page about Spinosaurus. Even if you don't know that much about dinosaurs, there's certain names that pretty much everyone knows. Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops, Velociraptor. I'd say Spinosaurus is up there as one of those. Ask any 10-year-old, 4 out of 5 of them will probably be able to name it. But Spinosaurus hasn't always been so famous, despite its iconic look with its long, crocodile-like snout, massive size, and big-ass dorsal sail. A lot of what we think we know about Spinosaurus is actually just clever guesswork. Let me explain. In the early 20th century, excavations by various different teams uncovered some unusual fossils in North Africa. Nobody knew what animal they might have belonged to until 1915, when German paleontologist Ernst Stromer named and described a new dinosaur species, Spinosaurus egyptiacus. Hold on. Spinosaurus egyptiacus. The type specimen, which is usually the first fossil to be discovered that's then used as a reference for all future fossil discoveries in a certain genus, was pretty shit preserved and consisted of only fragmented remains. Among these remains were parts of the jaw, the neck, ribs, teeth, and tail. But the thing that earned Spinosaurus its name were its dorsal neural spines. Unfortunately, the Spinosaurus fossils didn't get much attention at the time, possibly because it was 1915 and everybody had more pressing issues to worry about. Many years later, in 1936, the Spinosaurus fossils were put on display in the Paleontological Museum of Munich. Then, in 1944, the world was at war again, and the museum was bombed during a British bombing raid. The Spinosaurus fossils were blown to bits, which you would think would be the end of Spinosaurus. But no, in 1983, a new dinosaur was discovered in Surrey, England. Not a Spinosaurus, but a Spinosaurid, meaning it was in the same family of dinosaurs, but not in the same genus. Family, genus, species. It was named Baryonyx, and unlike the fragmentary Spinosaurus egyptiacus, it was mostly complete. Since Baryonyx was part of the Spinosaurid family, this allowed researchers to piece together what it and other Spinosaurids might have looked like. Baryonyx was smaller and didn't have the dorsal sail that characterized Spinosaurus, but the two did have a lot in common. They both had big-ass heads and teeth that looked very reminiscent of crocodiles, which immediately made the researchers think the Spinosaurids were semi-aquatic, or at least adapted to eating fish. But Baryonyx didn't have a body plan that was very well suited to swimming or hunting in the water. It looked pretty much like a standard terrestrial theropod dinosaur, with a weird crocodile head stuck on top. That is like the simplest way to put it, by the way, but I'm just gonna keep it simple. Then in the late 1990s, another Spinosaurid, Suchomimus, which means crocodile mimic, was discovered, which was pretty similar to Baryonyx. Baryonyx kind of goes hard as a name for somebody. Just saying. Baryonyx. Berry for sure. Or Onyx for sure. That's a sick-ass name. A Great Dane named Baryonyx. What else? A fish named Baryonyx. That's good stuff. Or a kid that ends up becoming a drummer. And then they have a band called Baryonyx and the Bombardier Beatles.
Writing a book is hard. Knowing if it's good, even harder. Neat manuscript analysis.
I don't know. I'm making plans for the future. Anyway, based on the limited evidence, researchers could only assume all Spinosaurids had a standard theropod body plan. There was still a lot of debate about whether Spinosaurus egyptiacus could have been more adapted to aquatic lifestyles than Baryonyx and Suchomimus. But since there were no more fossils, it was impossible to say for sure. It wasn't until 2014 that we got a new type specimen for Egyptiacus. And this is when the controversy about Spinosaurus really took off. The The authors of this paper noted that the back legs of the new Spinosaurus specimen were quite a lot shorter than the previous reconstructions had made them seem. Researchers had used baryonyx and suchomimus to model what other Spinosaurs might have looked like. They might have had a pretty standard theropod body plan, with long back legs for running around on land, but Spinosaurus definitely did not. This led the authors to speculate that Spinosaurus could have been a quadruped walking around on 4 legs, or that it was semi-aquatic and used its back legs for swimming. That's why you sometimes see reconstructions of Spinosaurus that look like this, which show it having short legs, ending in webbed feet, and a long eel-like tail. There's also some more heinous depictions of Spinosaurus that imagine what it would have looked like if it was fully aquatic, which make it look like some sort of freak-ass elephant seal, something like an ichthyosaur, maybe an early whale. Just feels like throwing shit out there, you know? Can't keep up with big science giving us new reconstructions, new shit to consider. Computer, give this guy stubby legs and webbed feet. Computer, make this guy semi-aquatic. Computer, make this guy look like an early whale. Computer, give Spinosaurus a big whack and double D's. Computer, throw on a BBL. That's enough of that. As much as I value and appreciate these depictions and their artists for their imagination, of course, some new evidence has come out that basically says, although Spinosaurus did hang out in the water and did eat fish, it probably wasn't aquatic. In February 2026, yes, this year, a team led by paleontologist Paul Sereno dropped a bombshell paper revealing they had discovered a new species of Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus mirabilis, as I said. It was found in Niger, right in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Today, the Sahara is one of the driest places on Earth, but in the late Cretaceous, when mirabilis was alive, it would have been a forested wetland ecosystem that could support several giant dinosaurs, including Spinosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus, several kinds of Titanosaur, even the biggest crocodile that ever lived, that we know of, Sarcosuchus, another sick-ass name, Sarcosuchus, Sarco for short. Even though there was plenty of water around, Sereno and his colleagues don't think mirabilis was a habitual swimmer. Instead, they describe it as being a hell heron that stopped along river edges. Sereno argues that even though mirabilis did have short legs, just like the Spinosaurus aegyptiacus neotype, it was still a massive animal, and its legs would have been incredibly strong and sturdy. This would have allowed it to wade in the shallows of large rivers to hunt for fish. Even 6 feet of water would have been like stepping in a puddle for a full-grown Spinosaurus. And that's not even the coolest thing about it. Not only did mirabilis have the iconic sail on its back, it also had a huge scimitar-shaped crest on its head, which probably would have made it one of the most standout animals living in the late Cretaceous that we know of. Very flamboyant, if you ask me. Aegyptiacus also had a crest on its head, but it was pathetic in comparison. Mirabilis basically had a sword sticking out of its head. It was also covered in a thick layer of keratin, kind of like a cow horn, which would have made it look even longer and sharper when the animal was alive. Pretty fucking gnarly. This new discovery helps us understand a lot more about the Spinosaurus family, including whether or not they were aquatic. From what Sereno and his co-authors say, it seems like Spinosaurus was more of a wader than a swimmer, which is still very cool, but there's still plenty that we don't know. One big thing is we don't know exactly how big mirabilis might have gotten. The specimen they found is a juvenile. It was about 26 feet long when it died, but it wasn't fully grown. Seems likely that it could have been much bigger as an adult. Part of what makes Spinosaurus such a popular dinosaur is that it is so mysterious. We have to use our imaginations to piece together what it might have looked like and how it might have behaved. And isn't that one of the coolest things about paleontology? Lots more to learn, lots more to discover. Anyway, moving on, because that's not the only cool new dinosaur discovery on the list. Back in March 2026, this year, scientists announced that a rare dinosaur fossil was found in South Korea. And it's cute as fuck. The fossil is considered very rare because not many dinosaurs have been found in South Korea. Matter of fact, until the new discovery, only 2 Korean dinosaur species had ever been reported on. Both of those are only known from postcranial remains, which means no skulls were found. There were definitely plenty of dinosaurs living there, because Korea has a lot of fossilized footprints and eggshells, but for some reason the skeletons are just particularly hard to come by. It's thought that in the mid-Cretaceous, when this new Korean dinosaur species was alive, Korea was made up of a lot of tidal mudflats. That meant dinosaurs who were walking through the mud were more likely to leave footprints behind. But it also meant the dinosaur remains probably got washed out to sea before they could fossilize. This new species is actually the first to have been found in South Korea in 15 years. So it's a big fucking deal. And the researchers who made the discovery decided to name the new species Dulisaurus, after a South Korean cartoon dinosaur called Dooley. Very cute. One of the cool things about Dooley is how well preserved it is. fossils. Not only did they find the postcranial skeleton, but they found its skull as well. Julie was almost fully encased in solid rock, which means its bones are all still in their original place, instead of being spread out fucking all over the place and fragmented. This gives a much clearer view of what Julie would have looked like when it was alive. And like I said, it's cute as fuck. Like the Spinosaurus mirabilis type specimen, Julie wasn't fully grown. Based on growth markers in its bones, Julie was probably no more than 2 years old when it died. The researchers who discovered it also think that it would have been covered in a thick layer of fluffy feathers, kind of like a baby bird. It was estimated to be about 18 pounds, but adult Juliesaurus might have grown to twice the size. Still, compared to a lot of dinosaurs that were around in the Cretaceous, Juliesaurus would have been pretty small. Julie was a kind of dinosaur known as a Neornithischian, but it was one of the earlier, more basal species in the group. Later Neornithischians included ceratopsians, like my personal favorite, Diabloceratops, also Pachycephalosaurids and hadrosaurs or duck-billed dinosaurs. Juliesaurus is thought to be somewhere near the base of this dinosaur family tree, during a time when the fancy shit of this lineage didn't evolve yet, so they were still just little guys. Speaking of little guys, feast your eyes on this little fucking freak face. This little son of a bitch. Gotta figure out how that's pronounced. Tyrannorodor heberti. And it's thought to be one of the earliest land vertebrates to eat plants. I know it's kind of thought that, like, at least this is how my brain works, that plant eaters are the primitive shit. Like, they're the baseline. And then some animals started to eat other animals. And then carnivores existed. But no. It's the opposite way around. There were land vertebrates eating other vertebrates and other animals before there were land vertebrates eating plants. I also don't want its badass name to deceive you. Tyrannorodor was no bigger than a fucking football. You could punt him right into next Tuesday. It was part of a group of early tetrapods called the microsaurs, which lived during the late Carboniferous and early Permian. They looked like little fucking footballs. You know, thick head, short tail, stubby little legs. Worth mentioning, even though they kind of looked like lizards, they weren't lizards. Lizards didn't even exist back then. Tyrannorodor was alive like 307 million years ago. That's before lizards. Tyrannorodor and other microsaurs might have actually not been closely related to any living class of animals. Some scientists think they might be related to modern salamanders, but I'm not entirely sure. They might have just been their own class, doing their own thing, leaving no descendants behind, which is pretty crazy to think about. Tyrannorodor is estimated to be about a foot long. Also had a snout that looks like it was adapted for digging, which makes the team that discovered it think Tyrannorodor was a burrow. I probably would be too if I was just a little guy living in the Carboniferous with all those big-ass bugs around. They probably would have tried to use me for sport. Scientists suspected for a while that herbivorous tetrapods must have evolved in the Carboniferous, because by the time the Permian rolled around, the dynamic of land-based carnivores and herbivores was already pretty well established. There were predators like Dimetrodon, and Gorgonop. And there were plant eaters like Lystrosaurus and Adaphosaurus. So since that dynamic, predator-prey dynamic already existed, it made sense that it emerged in the previous period, the Carboniferous. But no evidence had been found of early VeggieTales until Tyrannorodor came along. Tyrannorodor was found by an amateur paleontologist, Brian Herbert, who had been searching for fossils on Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia for hours before he stumbled upon a fossilized tree stump. But that wasn't all. Sticking out of this tree stump was the fossilized skull of a small lizard-looking animal. He immediately realized he found something new, so the research team that analyzed the fossil named the species Tyrannorodor herberti. Tyrannorodor herberti. So I said it wrong before. I said heberti because I misspelled it in the script. It's herberti. The really interesting thing about Tyrannorodor... is that when the research team did a CT scan of its skull, they discovered that its mouth was full of 36 teeth, as well as these weird grinding structures called dental batteries. It turns out these are some pretty complex structures. They're essentially formed of hundreds of teeth that are stacked on top of each other in rows. Together, they create a tough grinding surface that would have helped with chewing fibrous plants. These dental batteries also existed in certain plant-eating dinosaurs, like the duckbills and the long-necked sauropods. That strongly suggests Tyrannorodor was also a plant eater. But here's the thing. Dental batteries would have taken millions of years to evolve. So even though Tyrannorodor is the earliest herbivorous tetrapod that we currently know of, it definitely wasn't the first. Herbivory must have been developing in other land animals for a long time. That's why Tyrannorodor was so well adapted to eating plants. So not the first, just the earliest that we know of. All right. I saved the best for last. But first, a little biology 101. If you paid attention in class, you'll remember that all known forms of life are organized into 3 large categories. These categories are called domains. 2 of the 3 are single-cell domains, bacteria and archaea. 1 multicellular domain, the eukaryotes. Within the eukaryote domain, there are 4 kingdoms. So domain, kingdoms, and then other things. The 4 kingdoms are fungi, plants, animals, and protists. Protists, what the fuck are protists? They're basically a loose group, like a fucking wastebasket of multicellular shit that doesn't fit into the other 3 kingdoms. Things like slime molds. If you remember that blob that went viral, I need to do a video on the blob again. Slime molds are weird as fuck. Also, algae and kelp. Yeah, algae and kelp are not plants. Weird as fuck. Anyway, that mini lesson was necessary because it turns out that scientists might have just discovered a new type of eukaryote, which would potentially make it 5 kingdoms. That's a big fucking deal. It's an even bigger deal because some of you might have heard of prototaxites before. I really fuck with them. I've talked about them a lot. They were some of the largest organisms on land during the Devonian period, like 420 to 375 million years ago. They looked like huge branchless tree trunks. They got to like 26 feet tall, and there were no trees at the time. So these were like the trees of the time. All the plants that were growing on land at the time were pretty small and unimpressive. So these giant towers acted kind of like trees. There's been these little tracks found inside of them, probably from little millipedes and worms, like using them for shelter and shit. And what's crazy is because they were 26 feet tall, nothing else was 26 feet tall or even close to that. So they just towered over everything else on land. Walking around on land would have looked like walking on an alien planet. Since the first fossils of prototaxites were discovered way back in 1843, scientists have been arguing about what the fuck they actually were. Are they a type of algae, a plant, a fungus? The debate has been going on for over 165 years and nobody could agree. But for a while, the leading theory was that they were a type of fungus. That's what I've always introduced them as, because they have these tubes running through their insides, kind of like the internal structure you'd see in fungi. In 2007, a study of their carbon isotopes seemed to support this. But a paper published in January of this year, 2026, has raised an interesting possibility that prototaxites was none of those things, and that it was a totally different form of life. One that we never knew existed. Last time I pronounced this, everybody got mad. Because I don't talk about this place on a daily basis. I read it, I don't talk about it. It's not Edinburgh, it's Edinburgh. A team of researchers from the University of Edinburgh, I learned, in the National Museum of Scotland, examined fossils of a prototaxite species called Prototaxites titan that was found on the eastern coast of Scotland. The team found that even though prototaxites had those fungi-like tubes inside them, the way those tubes were structured was completely unlike anything seen in any known fungus, living or extinct. Instead of the orderly branching system you'd expect, there are these weird, chaotic 3-dimensional networks. There are also distinctive dark circular blobs running through the body of prototaxites. They called them medullary spots and noted that no known fungal group has anything like them. The team also did a chemical analysis of the fossil, and that had even more surprising results. Buried in the same rock formation as prototaxites were some ancient fungus fossils. These fungi were the same age as prototaxites, but they had very clear chemical signatures associated with chitin, which is basically the main building block of fungal cell walls. Prototaxites had none of that. A specific fungal biomarker chemical wasn't found in prototaxites either, even though it showed up in the surrounding fossils just fine. So, it seems like prototaxites was not a fungus. It was not a plant. It definitely wasn't an animal. And it probably wasn't a protist either. The researchers think it was something else entirely. A completely extinct branch of complex life that has no living relatives today. Which means that at some point in Earth's history, there was a whole kingdom of life that lived, grew gargantuan, dominated entire landscapes, and then vanished completely, leaving behind nothing but these mysterious stone columns and a very long-running scientific argument. That is one of the most insane things I've ever said. And, of course, just makes me want to know what else is out there, buried in the rock, waiting to completely rewrite the story of life on Earth. Because that's just fucking crazy, dude. That is some conspiracy theory level shit. But it's not a conspiracy theory, but it's very sick. And like I said, we're not even halfway through 2026. So, I personally can't wait to see what what else is described this year, what is discovered, what else is waiting to be published that scientists are just sitting on fucking waiting to announce to the world. And maybe at the end of the year I'll do another update. We'll see. If you like this video, let me know. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next video coming out on here. Something happening in the news that I just saw yesterday that now I'm gonna make a video on because it's fucking crazy and it provides an ethical dilemma and a question to be discussed. Keep up with behind the scenes content, live streams, and our Discord server on Patreon. And for now, stay curious. The world clearly has a lot for us to learn. See ya!
So guys, that is quite fresh, but we got a new kingdom where we found outfits of krakens. But I need to answer spoilers. The cutest dinosaurs. Though I only used herbivores, because that normally lives to the earth. But that was great. So visit Lindsay Nikole about animals and evidence like this. From pride from the heroes then business in the hospital degree. Visit her channel, watch her videos, but as it is, I'll start. Bye.